So we made an acquisition several months ago. And what we didn't know was that some of the team that was existing built a competing agency, and we didn't know about it. And they were sabotaging. I'll try to go fast because
I
there's a lot
know.
here.
Long story
I
short.
know it's been
Little bit
an
of
interesting
sabotage.
season. So they sabotaged like our website. So the leads, the people that were coming into our website that we were paying for, um, they there was code on our website so that way they were redirected to like porn sites, and we didn't know. It was horrible. So like
Yeah.
one day, like our president sent me a text. He's like, "Tim, you need to check out our website. I went into this link and something's happening." So I went and checked it out, and I saw what he saw. I was like, "Oh my gosh, we have to fix this."
Absolutely not.
So I like told Jess right away. So she starts
I just
praying,
started praying.
and he like
I will shut that down with my prayer.
he was totally hearing from God too, because he like woke up in the middle of the night and was like, I need to check this. I need to check our funnel. And then he found the code, found out who put the code there, which was one of those previous team members, and took it out, recovered it. And so we had been spending months with this brand new company that was profitable. And right after we purchased it, it became not
It's
profitable.
tanking.
And I'm like spending all kinds of hours working, trying to figure this out. And the team that I'm trying to have solve this problem with is the one that is behind sabotaging us. So like, man, it was a challenge. And we got to the point where we figured a lot of it out, and we made some changes and tried to move forward. And like now we're finally on the other side where like the company stabilized, it's making a little bit of profit again. Like there's still some work to go, but like, I mean, I'm talking about like a 9-month period where it's like, I mean, I needed the Lord to sustain me with like words and dreams and like super stressed. And I'm like, well, shoot, what happens when I've got to make this next payment and the cash flow is not there? So we're
Yeah.
gonna have to pull from our savings, which was set aside for other like future acquisitions. So it's like, it was a lot. And it was like worst case scenario, like the absolute worst case scenario that you can imagine
Of
of
that
buying a new business,
acquisition.
like of an acquisition. So at some point, a couple months in, while I'm trying to like solve these problems, really, burning the candle on both ends to try to figure out how to move forward and recover. I think maybe you said it or you did it. Like, were you the one that was like reading scripture? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so. She's like interceding, which is like awesome. Find a
Like, I don't
spouse,
know what I can
find
do,
a
but I can
partner that
pray.
will intercede because it's a big deal. Um, and she's like reading the Bible before and after. And at some point, I'm just like, oh,
I was just bookending my day with scripture.
yeah,
Wake up, first thing I'm going to read scripture.
yeah,
End my day, even if I'm already put my head on my pillow and going to go to sleep, and I've got my husband next to me, really anxious, grab that Bible. I just like lay it on my
yeah,
nightstand, end my day, even if I was already about to fall asleep, just read one scripture and
yeah.
meditate
So
on that.
during this time, I'm like tossing and turning. I'm not getting any sleep. It was really rough. And I decided, I'm like, no, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start my day with the Bible, and I'm going to end my day with the Bible. And I started doing that where I would wake up in the morning before my early morning calls with European team or European clients.
Mhm.
And then by the end of the day, when I've like gone through because all the other stuff in life was still going. I wasn't planning on spending this much time on this agency. I was planning on putting leadership in place, empowering them, and then moving on to the next one.
Making our mission statements and the things that what we're about, and then
But little did I know, it's like, oh, Tim, no, you're going to have another job for a little while. So
a
anyways,
second
yeah.
or a
So,
third.
so that being said, like I started sandwiching my day with the Bible, and I would say that is like a massive tool, like just giving the Lord opportunity to speak that above all the noise and the stress. And
Yeah.
the Bible is a wonderful place for that to happen, where you can get a scripture and it's just highlighted and it's like answers whatever pain your soul is working on at that time. And so I started reading before and after. And one of the verses that God led me to was this, which is in Psalm 8. So it's Psalm 8:2, and it says, "You have built a stronghold by the songs of babies. Strength rises up with the chorus of singing children. This kind of praise has the power to shut Satan's mouth. Childlike worship will silence the madness of those who oppose you." And so this was like a balm for me, because I'm like, man, I feel like I'm being heavily opposed. Like, like not everything's a spiritual attack, but like what we went through, like
Because there's more to the
absolutely was.
story.
Yeah,
There's other
there's
stuff
more there.
too.
So like the stress and anxiety is a shaky foundation where it's like the accuser when the enemy is like, oh, like you're not going to make it. Let's think about all your fears.
His
Let's,
voice comes in with accusation
Mhm,
and with attack.
mhm. Yeah. So like you have all your worst fears of like, well, what if this happens? What if
Yeah.
I get to X months down the road and the worst case scenario here happens? How am I going to resolve that? Right. So
Which
there's,
sometimes there's wisdom in knowing how to address, like thinking ahead to address things.
Mhm.
But the worst case scenario, if it's feeding that anxiety, it's the devil speaking to you, the enemy, your enemy is the devil, um, speaking to you and stirring that up and feeding that anxiety, feeding the spirit of anxiety.
Yeah, so here there's like it says childlike worship will silence the madness of those who oppose you. And so during this season, we felt very opposed. We felt like everything was stacking up against us. And there were all of these angles, both financial and team and client. Like there's just so much there. And it was so challenging. And like, I'm almost like, I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't know what to like, I didn't know what to how to handle it. Like it was
Mhm.
just so much. Right. And I'm like, I could work, but anyways, so this verse that came from the like sandwiching my day, right? Like I opened up my Bible and I felt like the Lord led me to Psalm 8:2 and I read it and it was so reassuring to me because it's like to me this means that I don't have to like think through my problems because it says childlike worship. And so like I thought about that. I'm like, what is childlike worship that will silence the madness
Madness of
of
those
those
who
who
oppose
oppose
you.
you? And strength rises up with the chorus of singing children. So it's like totally opposite of what the world will say. It's like, go work harder, like just push through. And this says like, no, you need to be like a child. And a child is like naive and doesn't have the answers, probably doesn't understand the impact of the world and the reality of the world. But like that child that doesn't understand the reality of the world is worshiping the Lord in that innocence and that naivety and just says, like, you are good, like you've got the whole world in your hands,
Yeah.
like you are God. And it's like this, I'm gonna worship you despite the madness of those who oppose me. And in fact, I'm not even going to engage like with the anxiousness or the logic that like that they want to pull me into,
Mhm.
that the enemy wants to pull me into. And instead, I'm just simply going to worship the Lord with a childlike heart, which kind of means like I don't know, kids don't have like business worries. Like they just want to go outside and play and like innocently
Well,
worship the
in a
Lord.
healthy home, they're provided for, they're
They're
taken
provided for,
care of.
they
They
have a
just know
covering.
that it's going to be provided.
Totally. So back in James, it's like it's in God's hands what's going to happen tomorrow. It's not in my hands. So again, the enemy is like, "Oh, let me put this all in your hands and let me challenge you with all I'm going to oppose you." And then like here in Psalm 8, it's like, "No, you just need to worship me." And that has the power to shut Satan's mouth.
That's a big deal. Like that, when I read that scripture, it was like a balm to me a few
Yeah.
years ago too.
Yeah.
Like, has the power to shut Satan's mouth. And when you're dealing with anxiety, where those biggest fears, all the
Mhm.
what ifs, what if this, what if that, it's like what I was saying, like those lies from the enemy. And it says this has the power to shut Satan's mouth, to just,
Yeah, it's like my intelligence is working against me and partnering with the anxiousness because
Mhm.
I can imagine like and I can posture and like, okay, what about this? What about this? And I can just get trapped. But like that positioning of having childlike worship. So anyway, so that's one of the next tools, right? Is like childlike worship. So like
Mhm.
turning on worship and like the God you are good songs, despite what's happening, and then engage in that worship. And that's a way to like shut Satan's mouth. So that's just like another tool that recently has really helped me
Mhm.
to pursue what has been kind of a long term, longer than I expected, where gosh, I don't know, 9 months into this company and I'm still in it day in, day out. Like it's still a lot of work, but the Lord is sustaining me through his word, through worship, through that perspective of it's actually in his hands. Like I will
Yeah.
co-labor with
Yeah.
him, but what's going to happen tomorrow is in his hands. Because at the end of the day, I'm still going to choose to just stop and go to the soccer game, go to
Mhm.
my son's soccer game.